Day 12 of the war in West Asia, and as this war causes a fuel crisis in most of our geopolitical neighborhood, including in India, where we're facing an LPG shortage right now, the question that everybody is asking is how long is this war likely to continue for? So there are effectively two sides. On one side is Donald Trump, and it depends on which of his mixed message and convoluted statement you want to go by on any one given particular day. On the other side is Iran and its new leader. He is turning out to be quite an enigma, and that's what we're going to focus on this video, where we're going to talk about who Mojtaba Khamenei actually is, where he came from, and why it appears that his country is split down the middle, in one half supporting him and the other half not. So we understand that senior clerics and the military and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard have pledged their loyalty to their new leader, but at the same time citizens have been chanting death to Mojtaba. What is really going on in Iran? Apart from that, there are also rumors that he's already become a target of Israel, because he hasn't actually been seen since his name was announced. So remember, before we start, like, share, subscribe, and sign up for our membership. And also, for those of you who have signed up for our membership, our offering to our members only is a news capsule that we're now putting out in audio form, but we will put it out in video fairly soon, where my team and I put together all of the big news of the day in a bulletin and we put it out, and we're working on making that more detailed. So if you sign up for our membership, you'll have access to that bulletin. And of course, let me know what more information you want in the bulletin and how you want us to do it differently. Okay, let's take a look at what's going on in Iran. Now, after Mojtaba Khamenei's succession was announced, reports and videos circulating online suggested that many Iranians were responding with anger. In few areas, like I said, protesters were saying death to Mojtaba, which really sounded a lot like the anti-government protests that we're used to seeing from Iran. These slogans, though, reflect a deeper frustration among some sections of the population who believe that this was a dynastic transfer of power and something that Iran worked very hard to boot out with its monarchy and its Shah. So they were not happy with what was going on. But I must point out here that information from Iran is difficult to independently verify because protests are quickly quelled and media coverage is tightly controlled, so we don't really know how people feel inside of Iran at this point. At the same time, Iran's state has broadcast, large rallies of support for him, for the new leader. And so the whole world is watching to see what he's actually going to think. And this is the reason why the world has to watch. Because internationally, Mojtaba Khamenei is a bit of an enigma to the international community as well. Unlike his father, who had already served as president before becoming supreme leader, and his father had years of experience in international diplomacy, Mojtaba has never actually formally held an executive position in government. He's never had, public meetings with any foreign officials, so nobody really knows what he thinks. As a result, we don't know what his worldview is like. He's going to, right now control Iran's nuclear negotiations, and we don't know where he stands. We don't know what he feels in terms of Israel and in terms of global powers and in terms of this particular war also. So for foreign capitals, the absence of this diplomatic record presents uncertainty and also some risk. Remember, clerics have cast the assassinated leader as a hero figure, and they're likening him to basically the martyrs in the Shiite symbol of sacrifice and resistance. In that particular light, Mojtaba, according to one US diplomat and a specialist on Iran, is even more hardline and worse than his father, and he's going to have a lot of revenge to extract. So there's a lot to watch out for as to who this individual is. Now, for those of us who don't know who he is, and quite rightly, because he has not been in the public eye at all, here's a quick understanding of whom Mojtaba Khamenei really is. He was born in 1969 in the Iranian city of Mashhad. He is the second son of Ali Khamenei, who reigned as supreme leader for more than 3 decades. And unlike political leaders, he did not rise through elections or through government ministries. He just grew up. He grew into the system by proximity to the powerful family. As a teenager, he served briefly in the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s, that devastating 8-year conflict apparently, where a lot of his beliefs were formed. And he decided to pursue a religious education in Qom, which is the head of the Shiite seminaries where the main religious training happens. quite late in his life, in his 30s. And even though he studied in one of these important centers of religious learning, he was not a very widely known critic. So he's not a senior government official, and he's not a senior cleric either. So where has he really come from, and how has his sort of influence built in the office of the supreme leader? He is apparently, according to some reports, a fixer. So for decades, he was known inside Iran as a gatekeeper and a power broker. He was a close confidant of his father, controlling access to the supreme leader and managing networks of influence. Analysts often said that Mojtaba became a key link between Iran's clerical leadership and its powerful security institutions. So he became very close to the military, to the Revolutionary Guard and the paramilitary, and these relationships proved crucial to his rise right now. In 2009, for example, there were protests that took place, and that's when he really entered public controversy. The Iranian presidential election, where a hardline president was re-elected to power, and the results were widely disputed. So there were people who took to the streets in what was called the Green Movement protests, and Mojtaba Khamenei allegedly helped orchestrate that election outcome. He also cracked down brutally on those protesters. The security forces that he was very close to crushed the demonstrators, and he at that point came into public eye, and also received a lot of criticism for the way those protests were actually handled. Now, for years, the speculation circulated inside of Iran as to who will actually succeed Ali Khamenei. The position of supreme leader is the most powerful position in the country because it controls the armed forces, intelligence services, the judiciary, and of course the strategic direction of Iran's foreign policy and its nuclear program. Now, despite having such limited public visibility, Mojtaba gradually emerged as a possible successor because of his alliances with the Revolutionary Guard and with conservative clerics who made him a very powerful candidate. Now, his succession is extremely controversial, which is what I told you earlier, because of Iran's revolution in 1979 and the rejection of hereditary rule. And to understand that, let me take you on a bit of a side quest where I tell you what happened with that revolution. Now, in 1979, Iran was ruled by a monarchy. The last king was Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. He was simply known as the Shah. And he was a deeply westernized person. He was very close to the United States. His government had pushed for modernization, industrialization, westernization. But it was also deeply corrupt and authoritarian. So all of the people who were close to the Shah were making a lot of money, and the Shah had been accused of losing touch with what was really happening on the ground, with what the people really needed, because he was surrounded by a small circle of people who were close to his family, who basically told him what they thought he wanted to hear and used his influence to make more money, appoint themselves into position of power and position of access. So opposition was suppressed. It was completely authoritarian. There were no institutions at all. Dissent was crushed by the Shah's secret police. By the late 1970s, protests began across the monarchy, against the monarchy across Iran. Students, workers, intellectuals, religious leaders, conservative members of society all joined that uprising. So in 1979, the Shah fled the country, and a cleric who was living in exile returned to Iran. That cleric was called Ruhollah Khomeini, and within months the monarchy collapsed and Iran voted to become an Islamic Republic. The new system combined elections with religious authority, so they have a president, but they would also have a supreme leader. The first supreme leader was Ayatollah Khamenei, who ruled until 1989 till his death, and that passed on to Ali Khamenei, who ruled for the next 3 decades and built a system where really the authority rested not with the elected politicians, but with the clerical leadership. Now, there is a side piece of information about the fact that the Persians were the original population of Iran they're not technically Arabs, and so they do not identify under this religious system. And there is a large population of Persians who feel that their entire history, their land, were taken away from them by this Arabic ruling. Institutions like the Guardian Council, the Revolutionary Guard ensured that the Islamic Republic remained fully in control and at all times. The irony then is that the revolution in 1979 overthrew and threw out a hereditary monarchy So no Nepo kids. And now here we have a new supreme leader who can only be described as a Nepo kid. Critics say that this makes the Islamic Republic look less like a revolutionary system and more like a theocratic dynasty, something that people are not happy with. Either way, the appointment represents a major turning point in Iranian politics. Now, what does this mean for Donald Trump and his entire regime change goal? It complicates the strategic goals for the United States. President Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested that Iran's current leadership must be replaced. Now, like I've pointed out in the past, the US doesn't have a great track record when it comes to regime change. The Revolutionary Guard, the most powerful military force in the country, has pledged its loyalty to Mojtaba. Wartime nationalism can rally elites as well around this leadership. So a regime change, at this point seems more complicated than it did before they started. Mojtaba Khamenei also now leads Iran in one of its most dangerous moments in history. So there's war overseas, there's an economic crisis at home which already existed before this war broke out. There are political divisions obviously within the leadership and within the country. Whether or not he emerges as a strong wartime leader remains to be seen, because we have no track record of him whatsoever. So he's also at this point having to make decisions about how Iran is going to handle the Gulf countries and the other Arab countries who they have been quasi-bombing, even after there was a promise that they will stop. Relationships with Saudi Arabia, relationships with the UAE, for example, all of these relationships are now holding their breath to see what happens next. It all boils down to this one man and the decisions that he makes that will obviously shape the future of Iran, the Middle East, and this war for the time being. And for as long as this war continues, there are going to be issues for business in the UAE, for people who live in the UAE, for people who need the oil that's currently waiting in the Strait of Hormuz, for those who are facing fuel shortages across the world, and of course for the partnership between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, who have to decide now how they are going to proceed with this war in Iran. Leave me a comment in the comment section on what you believe is likely to happen.